Hello everybody and welcome to this SUPboarder review of the 2022 Aqua Marina Hyper Touring Board. Now you'll also notice that we do have the older model. This is a 2-year-old model from 2020 of the Hyper in the studio here. So we are going to be looking back at this model and seeing what updates have been made to the newer 2022 board. Now I think it's great that we can reflect on the changes and the updates that have been made, just so we can give you a better understanding of how the sport is progressing forward, but also if the changes are going to be right for you. And that is what this video is all about. So we're going to be talking about this board, giving you all of the information about it, how it feels on the water, our thoughts and impressions, pros, cons, value for money, and of course, if this board's going to suit you. So make sure you do stick around to the end to find that out. So let's just jump straight into looking at the 2022 board. We'll firstly take a look at the specifications to get an understanding of the size of the board, look at the construction as well. This board is 12 feet 6 inches long, 32 inches wide, and 6 inches thick. It comes in at 370 litres of volume and weighs 12.5 kilograms. Its primary use is touring, paddling, and it retails for 679 British pounds. Make sure you do check local retailers for your pricing in your local currency. The 12.6 Hyper is a double chamber technology, so you have an inner chamber and also an outer chamber, mixed with some multiple rail bands just for that reinforcement and giving it that added durability and strength. Taking a look at the package that you do get with purchase of this board, and you will notice that we get a bag that opens up fully. Now this bag hasn't changed over the years from Aqua Marina. It is still a really lightweight bag, just a simple bag to chuck all your gear in and head down to your local waterway to get on the water. It also comes with a double action pump. Now the pump is a really nicely designed pump, great ergonomics on this with that wide handle base for pumping, and it does inflate the board nice and quickly. You also do get a coiled leash in the package. You also get that touring style fin, so a nice big area there gives you great stability on the water. And of course you do get a repair kit as well with purchase. Now you don't get a paddle when you purchase a Aqua Marina Hyper board, and I think that's just because that they're expecting you to already have a little bit of experience paddling, so you may already have your own paddle, but you can also add one on at checkout. If we start to take a look at the fittings found on this board and some of the features that may enhance your touring, starting off at the front here, you notice that we do have a nice large bungee space, 6 tie down points here, so you've got a really big bungee area. And if we transition back from that, we will have the deck pad, which is that diamond pattern with a crocodile skin, really nice and grippy under your feet. In the middle of the board, we obviously have our carry handle. Back from that, we have the valve point for the inner chamber. And as we filter back, we do have another bungee point at the tail of the board as well, so you can store a little bit more gear there. And then behind that, we have the valve point and the D-ring as well. I will notice on the deck pad that does have that kicker too. Flipping that board over, and we'll notice that just on the bottom, it has that single slide-in, click-in fin box, which is standard on most of the Aqua Marina boards. And we also have a tail runner. Jumping into the deflection test, where we do test how stiff the board is and how well it's going to perform on the water. We'll notice that this board deflected at 14 millimeters when under load with a 75 kilogram weight. But I think now is a great time to bring in the 2020 model and just compare it a little bit to the newer 2022 board. First off, I'm going to start off with the outline shape because we haven't mentioned that yet, and I really wanted to just highlight those differences between them because there is quite a big difference, and I like the way that Aqua Marina have developed their design process to be able to incorporate some great features for you when you are touring. Now, looking at the 2020 model, you'll notice that with the outline shape, it's really wide in that standing area, but it really pulls in quite narrow at the tail. So you do get a bit of a faster board with this lack of width in that tail area, But transferring that over to how they've updated into the newer board, we'll notice that it still does hold its width in the middle and does pull into the nose. But if we move back toward the tail, it actually widens up a little bit. So the tail width on the newer model is actually 2 centimeters more, which is giving you added stability in the water. The wider that tail is at the back of your board, it's going to give you much more stability when you are paddling, especially when you are carrying a little bit more gear there as well. If you were to take this on that longer touring adventure, that's a really great point to bring in if you are that heavier rider or if you are that bit of a lower level of paddler, because you get that added balance, that added stability from that, and you're going to be able to stay out on the water longer and enjoy it more as well. And speaking about some of the key differences that we do see between the two boards with their fittings, first we'll start off with the Bungee Systems. Now you can see on the 2020 model, it's only got those 4 D-ring points, whereas the newer model has those 6 points. And you also get that adjustable clip on the bungee cord as well. So you are able to tighten it up or loosen it as desired. Really nice addition with that. But then if we do look at the thickness of the cords, we'll notice that the newer board, that 2022 model, does have a thinner bungee cord. So maybe not as longer lasting or as durable as that thicker cord found on the older board. The deck pads are vastly different as well. We still have a diamond pattern, but we have a crocodile skin texture on the newer board, which gives it a lot more grip. On the older board, we'll notice that those diamonds actually go sideways and there's no texture on those diamonds to give you that added grip. So it is a little bit slippery and much more slippery compared to the newer board. Probably the best update that is going to help you when you are packing up your board is the positioning of the valve point in the inner chamber. So having a double chamber board, what that does is it gives you added stiffness, so added performance on the water. It gives you somewhat of a safety net as well. So if you do puncture that outer chamber, then the inner chamber still stays inflated and you are able to still paddle your board back to shore. But the positioning of it is much better. You'll notice on the older board, the valve point was really far forward at the front of the chamber. So when you did roll up the board, you still have all this air back here when you were deflating it. So you had to kind of roll it up a little bit or squash all the air out, and it was just a little bit awkward. Whereas the newer model, they've got it at the back, which is fantastic. When you are packing up that board, you can roll it from the front all the way back to the tail and you can still get all the air out nicely. And then if we do take a look at the D-ring situated at the back for the leashing point, we'll notice that it's a much thicker D-ring on the newer board. It does add that little bit extra weight, but it also just gives it that durability. So if we zoom in on some of the finer points of difference between these two boards, the width was a bit different to what Aqua Marina state on their websites. Obviously the Hyper in the 2020 model was meant to be 32. It's actually 33.5 inches wide, which is a big difference. They have improved it on the 2022 model though, but it's still 32.5 inches wide. So you're getting that little bit extra stability from this board, and it's not going to make too much of a difference if you are using it for adventuring, because you do want a bit extra width for your gear. And the weight differs between the two boards as well. The older model being 11.5 kilograms, the newer board being 12.5 kilograms. Now, I think that definitely feels a little bit more robust in its construction and in the way it's made. Just that heavier, but it just feels more durable. So before we do have a look at this board on the water and how it felt, I just wanted to speak about the rocker lines between both of these boards, which will flow into how this board does perform. Now we'll notice on the older model that this has a really flat rocker line that nose sits in the water, gives it great tracking, great glide as well. Obviously with that narrower tail, you're getting that little bit more speed from the board too. But the newer board has just a little bit of an added rocker in it. Now, while this isn't a bad thing, personally and between the team here at SUPboarder, we did prefer the more flatter rockered board for touring and longer distance paddling as well, just because you do get that added speed, added glide, and it just feels a bit nicer in the water. With that little bit of a rocker in the board, you'll notice that it pushes a bit of water off the nose, which means it slows you down a little bit. And then that tail also just sits just above the water. However, if you were paddling this in some choppier conditions, some bumpier conditions, that rocker line could help a little bit as well to get up and over the bumps, get through bumps, or even ride through little troughs in the wave. So between two waves, you can maneuver that board a little bit. However, I don't see this board being used specifically for that choppier water paddling. It's more of that you calm rivers, lakes. So moving into how this board did feel on the water, well, it is a great touring board, and I'm definitely not discounting it as something that you should be buying just because of that rocker line. It may suit a lot of you out there, and especially those lighter weight riders, you'll probably get a bit more performance from this board because it won't bend as much. It is not as fast as the older board, but it's probably slightly more stable. With that wider outline shape, what I personally liked about this board is that it really felt like you were paddling a touring board. A lot of space up here to store gear. You've got gear storage back here as well. It's stable. You're able to bring that gear in a little bit closer to your feet. Those bungees aren't too far up toward the nose. You have the ability to maneuver this board as well, being 12'6" long. Sometimes you get boards that are a little bit longer, a little bit harder to maneuver. So that 12'6" is a really great size if you are paddling, say, 5 miles to 10 miles. That's a really great distance to be paddling a 12'6". If you wanted to paddle a little bit further, you'd probably want to go for something a little bit longer, which is going to give you a bit more glide. But the ability to be able to step back, do a step back turn, and maneuver this board was a real highlight for me. Now, he had some lighter weight riders on this board, and to be fair, one of them was my mum, and she's a pretty experienced paddler. She's paddled quite a few boards as well. She really liked the stability on this board. She found this board to be overwhelmingly easy to use, and I think that's a real key from Aqua Marina, is that they are designing boards that you can jump on, have a great time on. Of course, the Hyper comes in that 12'6" and 11'6" sizing. So if you were that lighter weight rider, maybe you wanted to drop down to that 11'6" size. So I like what Aqua Marina are doing in the space of touring. I do feel like from now we could move into those cons. So for that touring, it would be fantastic to see some handles placed on the nose or the tail of this board, just for that ease of moving the board in shallow water. The older model didn't have it. The newer model doesn't have it. The next year's model may have it. Fingers crossed. Handle at the front would be a great addition. If you did carry gear, it just makes it so much easier to lift up that board, bring it in, or if it was at the tail as well. Something else that could be improved, but those bungee points here, they could be extended out to the rails a little bit more to just give you a bit more space to store gear under there. Another thing we'll say as well that we haven't mentioned in the video yet is just the weighted balance of the handle. It's just slightly off. The tail drops a little bit on both boards actually. So just moving that handle back a little bit just would give it that great levelness when you are carrying it. I think maybe that they do it without the fin in and the leash on. So if you do put the leash on, the fin in, just weighs it down that little bit extra more. So that way you kind of have to adjust it when you are carrying it. Now you're getting an okay board for the value for money side of things. At 679 British pounds, this board could be right for you. You obviously don't get a paddle in the package, but it is a quality board. You're getting a great pump, good leash. The bag's nice and simple, but it's a really well finished product, and it sits in that kind of mid to upper pricing scale of boards. Obviously, you get those premium brands that are over 1,000 British pounds. You also do get boards that are under that 500 pound mark as well. So you could go for the Hyper. Again, I'd like to see maybe some additions on the board. I think we will see that in the future from Aqua Marina. So maybe if you were to stay tuned, wait for their designs to improve for that certain categories, then you'd definitely be getting that value for money. It is still going to be a really good board for you though if you are that lighter weight rider up to say 80 kilograms, 85 kilograms. Personally, I weigh 85 kilograms. Found this board to be really nice on the water. I think if you're a little bit heavier, you may see that rocker line changing a little bit. Obviously, if you're carrying gear, that rocker line kind of balances itself out because it's the weights at either end almost. So that lighter weight rider carrying a bit more gear would be okay. Ability wise, definitely you would have had to have a little bit of experience paddling before, just because this board does have that pulled in nose. It's quite narrow. It's 12.6 long, so maybe if you're coming from that 10'6" all round shape, you're not going to get that maneuverability, or if you were a beginner getting into the sport, you're not going to have that maneuverability or those skills to be able to maneuver and control this board. So definitely, obviously, having that bit of experience will help you with this. And then one of the last things we'll mention is just that all the products do come wrapped in plastic. Now, we usually mention this in the cons section, but I feel like it needs its own section for that environmental credibility from the brand. It all comes wrapped in plastic. Would be really nice to see Aqua Marina start to change that within the factory, sending boards out wrapped in paper, wrapped in cardboard. A lot of other brands are doing it in the industry, and I feel like it's something that they are going to strive toward, because there is a big shift at the moment within the industry of sustainability, and it's definitely something that we all need to be thinking about. I really hope that you have learned a little bit in this video, and that you can see how the boards are evolving, what processes have been going into the design of the boards, how they're going to help you on the water as well. Really want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. If you do have any questions, please do leave them in the comments below. We'll happily get back to you. Thank you again very much for watching this review of the Aqua Marina Hyper Touring Model 2022. We look forward to seeing you on another SUPboarder review really soon.